Good afternoon. Welcome to this Birkbeck Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism lunchtime seminar on anti-Semitism now. I say a lunchtime seminar, but in fact it's a breakfast seminar for our speaker, Irit Dekel, who joins us from Indiana University in Bloomington. My name is David Feldman. I'm the director of the Institute. I'm hugely pleased to be able to introduce Irit today. Irit is assistant professor in the Department of Germanic Studies and the Bourne's Jewish Studies program at Indiana University. She writes about memory politics and ethnic and religious inequality in present-day Germany. She's the author of Mediation at the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, which was published in 2013, and her second monograph, Witnessing Positions, Jews, Memories, and Minorities in Contemporary Germany, is forthcoming. And today, she will be talking to Making Jews Visible, Germany's Anti-Semitism Commissioners. Irit, it's all yours.
So much, David, and thank you, the Birkbeck Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism, for the invitation and the long-time collaboration. I'm honored and I'm very happy and a little very excited, but nervous to be here. This is based on part of a chapter of my book that David kindly introduced. And I'm gonna go right in. Okay, so there's a rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic attacks on Jews, Jewish property, memorial sites, and Jewish identified institutions in Germany since October 7 Hamas attack on Israel and Israel's war in Gaza, now enlarged to Lebanon and the occupied Palestinian territories. Jews are unjustly attacked in Germany by different actors, major right-wing extremists, some left identified, and some Islamists, as a consequence of the year-long war, which continues. There are larger changes in the German society parallel to the rise in anti-Semitism, of right-wing extremism, emboldened by the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, tremendous success in state elections. German politicians have defined the protection of Israel as Germany's Staatsraison, or reason of state, long before the war. This began in 2008 in a visit, or sort of marked, in a visit of Angela Merkel to the Knesset. And this is because of Germany's historical responsibility for the Holocaust. The commitment to protect Israel and the association of Jews with Israel is manifest in Bundestag legislation, public events, and in the Office of State and Federal level commissioners, quote, for Jewish life and the fight against anti-Semitism, unquote. Without calling into question the real need to fight anti-Semitism, the intervention I will make here today seeks to explain the special kind of experts and expertise that develops around fighting anti-Semitism in Germany today. I'm focusing on the role and concept of the witness and witnessing to explain the protection of Jews together with varied Jewish responses. So my talk brings a new angle in this way on the German debates concerning anti-Semitism. Next slide, please. Okay, so I found this orange sticker on the ground during a walk in Tiergarten in July 2024. It was produced by the Jewish community and given to institutions. It was also a social media campaign, hashtag We Protect Jewish Life, calling for action and solidarity. You see the second image. This is taken from Meet a Jew website. So this is Jews or Jewish groups representing themselves. And Meet a Jew is a project of the Central Council of Jews in Germany that began actually earlier on in 2015 in a project called Rent a Jew. And so we move from Jewish encouraging non-Jews to encounter them as religious. I mean, you see here religious signs like a menorah to be separated from a Chanukiah, apples and pomegranate for Rosh Hashanah, presumably, and the honey goes with them, and then Hebrew letters and other markers of religiosity, together with Haribo gummy bears, and that would be to signify kosher and unkosher. So we move from this encounter of Jews as religious here to Commissioner Felix Klein, and on his website, it is written, I quote, this is the Anti-Semitism Commissioner commissioned in 2018, I quote, fostering Jewish life and making it more visible, if done in consultation with the groups and individuals concerned, can therefore make a help to prevent anti-Semitism, unquote. As we see, Jewish life is measured with regard to visible religiosity and anti-Semitism. And we haven't seen Jews yet, but we're going to do so in the next slide. So making Jewish life visible for the goal of preventing anti-Semitism. So if we look at the slide, right, what's Jewish life, right? Jewish life, why not simply Jews, right? And this is a question I asked many interlocutors in my research, and here we can ask, how are the first or second images proof of Jewish life? And again, the kind of short answer is Jewish symbols. Okay, next slide. Great. Thank you, Naomi. So how do you make Jews visible? In showing this photo, actually on the website of the Anti-Semitism Commissioner, in presenting their missions, by showing Jews explaining their religiosity and holiday traditions, and talking about anti-Semitism by new federal and state systems of experts and expertise, which cast Jews as religious, often faceless men, as we see in this picture. I studied actually the representation of Jews in German, contemporary German media, and that's the usual way to present them, faceless men from the back showing their kippah. This form of showing and witnessing Jews as faceless religious men has been stable in the German press for decades. Okay, so let's read the text on the slide from, again, the Federal Anti-Semitism Commissioner website. I quote, making Jewish culture and Jewish life visible as an important part of daily life in Germany is essential so that Jews can feel that Germany is their home. This is all the more true in view of the betrayal of all civilized values that was the Shoah, the anti-Semitic resentment that is still deeply rooted in our society, and the large number of anti-Semitic crimes and attacks, unquote. So we understand that seeing Jewish things and Jewish people who are not unsafe in Germany is a Holocaust memory-related task, right? We're negating uncivilized Holocaust, which rightly connects historic anti-Semitism with deeply rooted anti-Semitism in German society, while also apologizing and saying, well, we actually say the Jews are rooted in Germany. Okay, let's go to the next slide about witnessing Jews. So let's unpack this rush to make Jews visible, to see or witness them as safe and alive. I claim that German discourse on Holocaust memory over the past decade has developed a social role it calls witnessing, by producing and appointing what I call witnesses after the witnesses, first to Holocaust evidence and then to anti-Semitism, which is why they're always coupled. Commitment to Holocaust memory is seen as a prophylactic against social ailments such as right-wing extremism. Since this production process focuses on Jews attacked based on their visibility, witnesses lack the capacity to witness events that involve or discrimination toward minorities in the present. In other words, German society produces what it sees as testimony to the Holocaust and to anti-Semitism by testifiers, Jewish or not, trained to approach anti-Semitism in relation to the Holocaust only and extend it to the danger to Israel. And we'll see more of it in the next slide. Naomi, please. Yeah, thank you. So I argue that training new witnesses after the witnesses becomes a mode of anti-political mobilization and works on civil society and through experts and expertise. Political actors look to experts to determine how to extend the normative reach of Holocaust memory in Germany by sustaining witnesses or witnessing in other mediated means after the death of the survivors. So the photo shows the Brandenburger Tor, Brandenburg Gate, on November 9, 2023. And this was an initiative of the city of Berlin. The mayor is CDU, Christian Democratic. And it connects symbolically two memorial days. The November pogrom of 38 and October 7, or almost a month to it, Germany to Israel, right? We see the Israeli state colors and the Star of David, and Israel with Jews and the Holocaust, right? Nie wieder is jetzt, never again is now. The fear that after the death of the last Jewish survivor, eyewitnesses of the Holocaust, the possibility of bearing witness and accounting for injustice will be diminished, together with Holocaust memory itself, I claim, reveals both the temporal and moral limitation of the concept of witnessing as popularly used in Germany and its spectacular character. I'm completing a book manuscript on this topic and enlarge that discussion there. So I think we can compare the process of making Jews visible to fighting anti-Semitism, to fight anti-Semitism, or in order to fight anti-Semitism, to the instrumentalization of controlling women through preventing access to reproductive health care, which is a political mobilization mechanism in the US, which misdirects attention from the domination of women as it demands care for abstract subjects. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. And in this social production process, witnesses themselves are recruited to serve within a discursive frame designed for a redemptive project confined in cyclic time, beginning with the Holocaust and continuing with contemporary anti-Semitism. So you can see in my chart, you have the Holocaust. If it's improperly remembered, it leads to anti-Semitism, and if that's not witnessed, then the Holocaust might repeat. So the point of reference is majority society's investment in the outcome or proof that, indeed, the Holocaust or later anti-Semitism is witnessed by self and state-appointed testifiers and newly trained witnesses, so that, one, the testimonies and witnesses continue to motivate the suppression of right extremist social tendencies, and thereby the Holocaust does not repeat by Germans on Jews. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Great. What happens with these appointed witnesses? Since 2018, as you see, around the same time that the Federal Commissioner's Office was created for the protection of Jews or for Jewish life and the fight against anti-Semitism, new mechanisms of reporting anti-Semitism were designed in new network of regional, state, and institutional and federal office dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism in Germany. The Federal Association of Departments of Research and Information on Anti-Semitism, RIAS, is the body that monitors and collects this evidence. Based on the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism, RIAS uses distinct categories called manifestations of anti-Semitism, and they're listed here: anti-Judaic anti-Semitism, Israel-related anti-Semitism, post-Shoah anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic othering, and modern anti-Semitism. And they say, I mean, I'm reading their annual reports, which they publish actually in English and in German, and they say that post-Shoah and Israel-related are the most prevalent and most entangled forms of anti-Semitism. So with the theoretical framework of sociologist Gil Eyal, I claim that new anti-Semitism experts are produced in the commissioners, new devices, this is the IHRA and the RIAS reports, and new categories, as we see here, to call anti-Semitism. There are new institutional arrangements that are created as a network of, as we said, federal, state, regional anti-Semitism commission officers and institutes who work together to categorize anti-Semitism cases according to these measures. The mechanisms of recruiting witnesses to anti-Semitism
Machine fixed.
Sorry, we didn't do next? Yeah, we're still, no, we're still in this one. So the mechanisms are a mode of political engagement that doesn't address the problem of anti-Semitism in German society with its entanglements with the complex history of racism-based discrimination. So how much Jews in Germany participate in the process of making themselves visible and appointing witnesses to anti-Semitism? I'm going to walk you through a short history of how Jews thought of this possibility. So next slide, please. Great. Okay, so between 1951 and the new millennium, to the best of my knowledge, Jews did not seek to appoint an anti-Semitism commissioner. Philipp Auerbach, a Holocaust survivor himself, was accused of corruption and sentenced to time in jail by Bavarian judges, the majority of whom former Nazis. He died by suicide shortly after and cleared of all accusations subsequently. We fast forward to 2002, actually, with the migration of about 200,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union. There were discussions between federal government and the Central Council to have an official representation in the form of what sociologist Michael Bodeman would call maybe court Jews. And so we moved to 2006, as you see on the slide. The Federal Foreign Office established the post of Special Representative for relations with Jewish organization, Holocaust remembrance, anti-Semitism issues, and international Sinti and Roma issues. In 2014, career diplomat Phyllis Klein took the position and held it until 2018 when he became the first anti-Semitism commissioner. And as you can see in the portfolio of the anti-Semitism commissioner that he holds, the Sinti and Roma part is knocked down. Okay, next slide, please. So the two categories of anti-Semitism and Jewish life became entangled in the work of one commissioner. In 2008, the 70th anniversary of November 9, 1938, so we keep going back to that cyclic time, the conversation shifted away from financial agreement, and there would be renewed regularly, or arrangements, to the idea of an anti-Semitism commissioner within either the Ministry of the Interior or the Chancellor's office. And several Jewish identified actors did participate in these discussions, and I note here Dieter Berger, which was then the director of the AJC, the American Jewish Committee in Berlin, and Julius Schöps, the director of the Moses Mendelssohn Zentrum in Potsdam. And in 2008, the parties discussed as equally important both establishing a panel of experts, this was Schöps' idea, that will produce a report, and the commissioner. It seems that at this point, one of the ways Jewish actors found to support, promote, and protect quote-unquote Jewish life was to couple it with the problem of anti-Semitism. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The European Union also participated, and between 2015 and 2018, there was an extensive work to establish an anti-Semitism commissioner on the EU level. The European Parliament adopted the resolution of June 1st, 2017 on combating anti-Semitism. It features 20 action points, and I note here action 2, or item 2, that calls, quote, on the member states and the union institutions and agencies to adopt and apply the working definition of anti-Semitism, the IHRA. And item 5, quote, calls on the member state to appoint national coordinators on combating anti-Semitism, unquote. In 2022, that is important too, and we now direct our gaze to Germany, the first federal commissioner for anti-discrimination was appointed. This is Ferda Ataman, and her office is responsible for discrimination on the basis of race, age, gender, sex, sexuality, or disability, and it includes the Anti-Semitism Commissioner. Next slide. I'd like to conclude and think how this matters. Okay. So I claim that the German society of the past decade or so produces witnesses after the witnesses to the Holocaust and to anti-Semitism. In this social production process, new experts, expertise, and tools to fight anti-Semitism were developed. These reflect the social angst in Germany as a plural society, a plural democracy, and the role assigned to Jews or Jewish life as serving as proof that it indeed holds together. As you see on the slide, in creating social mechanisms that point at Jews as a separate religious minority, celebrated as both endangered and endangering, German institutions work more on repression than on education, and do not directly address the rise of an organization of the extreme right wing. Rather, fighting anti-Semitism becomes a redistributive power project in which Jews are invited to absorb the violence by extreme right-wing German citizens, perpetrators, and redistribute it to migrants. Jews in Germany are 90% migrants, and Muslims. Next slide, please. Depending how institutions created roles and categories that reflect deeply embedded convictions about Jews as others, help us see that even if well-meaning, and with the important goal of fighting anti-Semitism, the institution tasked to make Jews visible and fight anti-Semitism do three other things that we should pay attention to. One is create concepts and devices that fail to address the ways anti-Semitic actors are organized, emboldened, and carry their deeds against Jews and other minorities. Two, these devices bundle the legitimate critique of Israel's policies as anti-Semitism and dangerous for Jews in a way that masks actual anti-Semitic convictions and deeds, which one could better address and understand with the Jerusalem Declaration of Anti-Semitism, the JDA, that I'm also a co-signatory of. And three, in the commissioner system, Jews, set apart from society, are directed to fear Muslims and migrant minorities in newly organized hierarchies of belonging that substantiate, not fight, right-wing extremist ideologies. Thank you. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Irit. So we have plenty of time for questions and discussion. If you do have a question or a comment that you'd like to make, please raise your virtual hand, and I'll call on you to speak one by one. But perhaps I can start with a question, Irit, which is a sort of, I suppose, British-centric question, which is to say, in this country, attempts to combat anti-Semitism focus very much, I think, on the Holocaust and on long traditions of anti-Semitism in the UK and in Europe. And we look around us and we inevitably think, well, these haven't been very successful. And so one possible way forward would be to say that just focusing on the Holocaust and on long traditions of anti-Semitism on their own has been a mistake, and that what is needed is a greater emphasis on Jewish life. Now, I can see that the emphasis on Jewish life as male religiosity is not it's not the only or the right way to go. But looking at it from the UK, it's not obvious that what is being done in Germany is wholly wrong-headed.
Yeah. Thank you for this question. It helps me put the finger on what I'm saying on Israel, and then we can move to the UK. And the UK is obviously a different case. What the German society is doing, and as you see, also recruits young Jews to explain who they are through Meet a Jew, which started from Rent a Jew, which had this sexual connotation of exchange. And was very humorous, right? Is to actually represent Jewish voices. And there are beautiful ways of doing this that Germany also or allows doing, right? Or there are spaces for this to happen. My focus is on, again, the expertise representing Jewish life. Directs attention actually to separating Jews from other Semitic others, right? There's so much action and discursive effort to say Jews are deeply rooted in Germany, or we're happy that Jews are here. And, author Esther Dischereit, for instance, says, nobody should be happy that I exist. I exist, independently, right? So I think the investment in saying, you belong with us, and we're going to show you with a kippah from the back, right, is an act of erasure and ownership together with celebration. And that actually sets apart this minority and also sets them apart in terms of spaces in which we meet and interact from other minorities and I would say in a plural democracy that actually has all the minorities that have citizen or permanent resident or resident rights. This setting out of a minority and celebrating it in relation to another country actually plays into the hands of the right-wing actors and actually uses their language. And this is not my point. This is a point that, for instance, Jens Christian Wagner, who's a head of a few, I think of Buchenwald and Mittelbau-Dora, says time and again. So here I respond to different German actors that perform Holocaust memory, such as Jens Christian Wagner and others. That say this is wrong-headed. I focus on the representation element as a sociologist and on experts and expertise, because I think that experts to Jews has a strange echo to right, to other times, and so I just want to direct attention to it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Daniel Ben Ami, you have a question or a comment you'd like to make?
Yeah, a couple of questions, more specifically in relation to German politics. So, for example, I've read Felix Klein, the main anti-Semitism commissioner you mentioned. He's very vehemently attacked the AfD, the Alternative for Germany party. And I should say, quite unequivocally, if I was German, which I'm not, I wouldn't vote for the AfD. But nevertheless, I think there are real dangers in that, because what you have is an institution of the German state, as you've described it, which is meant to fight anti-Semitism. And that kind of argument that people should be very wary of the AfD could easily increase cynicism. In other words, anti-Semitism is being instrumentalized by the German state, by the parties that dominate it, like the SPD and the Greens and the CDU. And that kind of intervention, there's a real danger, it seems to me, that it could create a great deal of cynicism. And the other thing is, it does seem to me that you've underestimated left-wing anti-Semitism and Muslim anti-Semitism. And I'm not saying all Muslims in Germany are anti-Semitic, not at all, but I think there is a real significant problem there. So, I mean, maybe just to say something in relation to the legitimate criticism of Israel. Of course, Israel can be criticized, just like any other country can be criticized. But it seems to me that in Germany, as in many other countries, a lot of the criticism of Israel goes way beyond legitimate criticism. It's basically saying Israel is the epitome of evil. It is the most evil, terrible state in the world. And as far as I'm concerned, when it crosses that line, it's very clearly anti-Semitism. So it seems to me that anti-Semitism in Germany, which I do try to follow, yes, there's a problem on the right, but there's a real, very substantial problem on the left in Greens, and there is a real element of Islamic anti-Semitism which can't be ignored.
Thank you so much, Daniel Benami. I did not say that these didn't exist. Actually, the first slide responded to that. Of course, there is, I mean, so I'll go in the order of your questions. There is instrumentalization of anti-Semitism. It just took 20 minutes to talk about the experts and expertise. Some of the experts, I mean, in the chapter, which will come out in the book, some of the experts actually are part of the instrumentalization project. But I didn't put the spotlight there because I wanted to show the systematic elements. And I think, so the instrumentalization actually works on all the political spectrum, right? And the different political parties outperform each other in showing that they show Jewish life in that very bizarre way that abstracts Jews, makes them dangerous, and also celebrates them. And actually, you know, in that, all the political parties participate, maybe except for the left party and also the Green to an extent, right? Volker Beck was part of the effort for Antisemitism Commissioner, and that's a former left party member. Of course, I mean, I'll go back now to, there is left-wing anti-Semitism. This happened, for instance, with the occupation of the Humboldt University, Unistrasse 3, in May. That was my office building. I can't imagine what it would be to go back there now. And there was attack on professors and professors' doors, properties that have projects in collaboration with Israel, such as I had, the German Israeli Foundation. I'm proud to have done that. And so, yes, there is a problem. Again, I took the focus on the systematic building of experts and expertise to Jews, so as to talk about the condition of minorities and how different constituencies outperform each other in not playing as a plural democracy. All the points that you mentioned are in the chapter and are part of the analysis. So that's one thing. As for, and that also includes Muslim anti-Semitism, although we have, I mean, thinking about what happened in the violent and also violent to property and to persons events last spring in Berlin or in other German cities, also Islamist marches in Hamburg that continue to happen, right? I would put it on kind of on the analytical spotlight on the fact that there is a polarization in German society, such also in British society. Society I come from is Israeli, there for sure, right? So that's another context. And then as for the critique of Israel, sure, I mean, there is, or there are responses in online, also responses or statements that I read that are straight out anti-Semitic, saying that Israel as a country shouldn't exist. And of course, they're not legitimate. And states at the same time are sticky institutions, right? Nobody asks whether where I'm sitting now, which will have very decisive elections in a few weeks, should exist if it fails to act as a democracy or when it launches wars of aggression, right? But I want to see it in the context of what plural democracies do to defend themselves. So that was my focus. I see questions. Let's go maybe with Anna.
Anna Savatska, do you want to,
thank you.
to raise your question?
Yeah, thanks, Irit, for this fascinating talk. I find it really interesting. And I would like to ask you about something that is not clear for me. I don't understand what those programs and those organizations, you know, this institutional approach, what is the assumption in there about the relationship between Jewishness or Jewish life and anti-Semitism? Because it seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the assumption is that actually if you present Jewish life in particular way, then the anti-Semitism gets lower. As a person from Eastern Europe, I can assure you it doesn't work like this. I mean, in Poland, for example, my research is based in here. The Jewish community or Jewish individuals, it's really hard to say about community sometimes, it's just 15,000 people. And the number of anti-Semitic beliefs, prejudices, and ideas is really tremendous. And it has nothing to do how you present Jews, in my opinion. I would argue that there is, of course, anti-Semitism to a large extent, shape Jewish life, but that's the direction, not the other way around. And my question is, do I read it right, that actually these programs makes Jewish life visible is based on the assumption that it works in a way that the specific presentation of a Jewish life can, like make anti-Semitism less intense or something like that?
Thank you for this excellent question. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the core of the issue, right? Why, if you show more and more Jews with kippas from the back, you think that you make anyone safer, right? And I actually think that it's not about Jews, right? It's not about showing Jews. I think this is this is why the shift in terms from Jews to Jewish life matters so much. So to say, oh, we're going to show Jewish life, maybe we show a menorah. Now, this is not cynical. There was a project of the CDU called From Shabbat to Shabbat that I analyze in the book. They wanted to celebrate Jewish life, and you had politicians holding a menorah saying, I'm going to tell you what's a menorah. They thought they were doing the best thing, to saying, we're not afraid to, I would claim, a little bit become Jews and play Jews and stay safe. But again, play Jewish life. So once we move to actually, including Jews as any other minority or any other member of society in a discussion, then the language and the way or what would be presented and discussed would be different. And this is different in talking about different Jewish groups, right? I mean, so the Israelis, I wrote about that in a piece, You Are My Liberty, about Israelis in Berlin. They're presented as fish in the water. They belong. And they're also, and their nightlife is really important. I mean, there's something about sexuality with them and their sexuality. They're young, they're liberal. Again, the ownership then is presented in a different way than saying to someone, well, this one is a Jew on the father's side when addressing post-Soviet Jews. But once we get to talking about actual people, then you see how this separation work takes place. And mostly the issue is, and I guess that connects also to the question, to your earlier question of both David and Daniel. So what about doing Holocaust memory protects Jews, right? And so if we show Jews who are not in danger from the back as saying, nobody kills him now, then they're safe, and then our democracy is safe. And there are those leaps that sustain that logic. So I think that's a very interesting and helpful point. I'm looking at also at the chat. So one thing is that if it turned out that I actually said that Volker Beck is not from the Green Party, I'm sorry, thank you, Michael Brenner. Volker Beck is from the Green Party. So thank you. I see other hands. I'm thinking, yeah, I'll see another question by Brian Hayet. Could I say something about why relativizing the Holocaust in Germany?
Irit, if you answer the questions, and I'll make sure that all of the
okay, great.
So all of the questions are asked. First of all, David Renan, and then Brian Chayet, and then there's a question in the chat as well. Maybe we'll take all three together and you can respond. So, so David.
Thank you, Irit, for your talk, and I'm looking forward to seeing the book now. I have a question to you, Irit, and I'd like, which somehow connects to comment on Anna's point earlier. You asked about the connection between Jewish life and anti-Semitism. And I think that goes back to a problem the Jewish community has in Germany from day one after 1945, where it sought a role to play. And the first role, and it sought a role to play because of the guilt feelings which it rightfully had for being there in the land of the perpetrators. And so the first role they invented to themselves that they would help in ensuring that Germany would be a democracy. They also invented some other ideas that they are a conduit between Germany and the Jewish life in other countries, whereas they were considered pariahs in the rest of the Jewish world. That is one point. Now they cannot get rid, I believe, of this need to play a role. And the role which they now feel they play is fighting anti-Semitism. They seem to define themselves by combating anti-Semitism. And here is my question to you, Irit, and that is, how do you actually assess the role of the Zentralrat der Juden in both the building and maintaining of the system which you briefly described, of those institutions that seek out witnesses after witnesses? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shall I answer or shall we read?
I think you should answer this, actually.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, David. Glad to see you. Glad to see so many colleagues here. So thank you all for coming. This is a great question about the Zentralrat. Their roles changed, right? And their make is changing and changed in the past 20 years. They have a huge role, right? They're also the go-to people when politicians want to know, okay, what's going on? They're centrally interviewed. And so the Zentralrat has two effects, I would say. One is medial in the sense that they kind of try to represent the various Jewish positions, but I mean that's since it's a they have a political make that is more conservative than at least the Jewish communities in the urban centers. Then this is skewed. I think their role both in mediating, mostly in mediating, is enormous. Mediating the questions and mediating what has to be the language of fighting anti-Semitism. And again, I'm not putting into question that there is a rise in anti-Semitism or that it should be fought against. I'm talking about a certain moment in which a language developed, as you said, David, a symbolic apparatus of witnessing Jews, and this is why I focused on the term witnessing, right? Seeing Jews, but seeing Jews not as co-signatories of an event, even if they report on anti-Semitic attacks, and they do, because there are many anti-Semitic attacks. This summer, I visited in Berlin, and except for one, all of the Jewish colleagues and friends that I have experienced anti-Semitic incidents. Some of them are not Straftat or Straftäten, right? I mean, they're not, they wouldn't be categorized by the police as the events. My focus on the witnessing enables me to do two things. One is to revisit the concept of witnessing as solely embedded with the discourse on the Holocaust and enlarging it a little bit with other actors, Jewish or not. And this is what the book is doing. The other is to show the kind of back and forth exchange between, as the book is called, witnessing positions, right? It's both active. It positions me now that I witness and I'm being witnessed, okay? And it creates positions. And this is not a theoretical intervention. If we observe the positions it creates, maybe we can understand social tendencies better. And going back to the Zentralrat, yes, there is a certain very narrow path that I think they're taking also mostly meaning well. I mean, so I'm putting aside the instrumentalization. Sometimes when there is a state of emergency, instrumentalization takes place, and it's and sometimes it's lamentable. But that creates a very constrictive, discursive site for thinking about racism and the entanglements between racism and anti-Semitism. And since most people who attack Jews, as we see, for example, in the case in Halle, also hate other minorities, and the terrorist from Halle, when he failed to kill Jews, 51 of them hiding in a synagogue in 2019 in Yom Kippur, went and killed 2 citizens, one in a nearby joint that he held, was owned by migrants. We must look at those entanglements. We must understand them if we care about plural democracy. I hope I answer the question.
Thank you, Irit. Brian, do you want to ask your question? Brian Cheyenne.
Yes. Thank you so much, Irit. It's a really interesting talk, and I really look forward to your book. And I couldn't agree more on the association of witnessing with the Holocaust or testimony with the Holocaust, which obviously can apply to other historical forms of suffering, such as slavery. And this brings me to the question, which is, how much is what's called in Germany the relativizing of the Holocaust policed in Germany? So I'm going to be in Berlin talking about Primo Levi and slavery. Will that be considered a form of relativizing? And who polices it, and how is this policed?
Thank you. This is a great question. I hope it won't be policed. Some of the policing happens behind scenes and in various regrettable forms of control. So maybe you won't even experience the policing. But I think, right, not that it won't happen. I think it's a great point about thinking about relativizing in opening the scope, right? So in fact, I think actually that the turn to Jewish life, for instance, is because there is Black Lives Matter, right? And in one of the areas of the analysis of what the Zentralrat is doing, there was a campaign last January, in January 2024, called run by the Zentralrat, Stop Repeating Stories, kind of connecting Holocaust stories to or Holocaust time anti-Semitism with anti-Semitism today. And some of the forms are repeated. But again, the direction of the gaze is to both accuse society together with accusing Jews of repeating the Holocaust and saying, stop. So either you stop to exist, or stories will have to stop, or society has to stop repeating stories as if stories are not, as if society didn't change, as if the time didn't change. And so that's part of the angst about relativization. Now, there is, of course, relativization, again, going back to great colleagues doing excellent work on Holocaust education in Holocaust education centers in Germany and in other places, but I focus on colleagues in Germany and also the Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism at the Technical University, which are collaborators in a series of events that David and I were part of in Cambridge University. You have sites in which there is serious study of the different kinds of anti-Semitism manifestations, left and Muslim and so on. That's also taking place in DEZIM, in the German Center for the Study of Integration and Migration. And those are the sites of understanding the deep issues with who's relativizing when and to what and to what purpose. But again, because there is a discursive element here of what's supposed to be said and by whom, sometimes the policing is self-policing. right? What do I do to be sound or to sound balanced? And these are important considerations. But as we know, and at the same time as we know, there are canceling of events of certain voices that present the Palestinian plight that are not against Israel or Israelis. Or pulling away of funding, and a new legislation that is on the desk of the Bundestag called Nie wieder ist jetzt, on the never again is now on the protection of Jewish life, right? So this cyclic element of thinking again of never again, right? This is a floating signifier that I think wouldn't take us away from both understanding what we do with Holocaust memory and how we protect Jews and other minorities. So I think this is a point I was trying to make here. Thank you.
Thank you, Irit. Before going to Michael Brenner, there's a question in the chat from Maor Shani that I'll read out. Thank you for your lecture. I hope to read more about your theory soon. I do not understand what evidence that, quote, these devices bundle the legitimate critique of Israel's policies as anti-Semitism in a way that masks actual anti-Semitic convictions. Can you please expand on that? And just to ensure that we get everything in, let's have Michael's a question or comment as well, and then you can take both together.
Thank you, David and Irit. I'll keep my camera off. It's very early still in the US. So I just have some thoughts about how these issues developed over time. Having grown up Jewish in Germany in a different time, I think the philo-Semitism was always there. The performative function of the Jewish community, and in fact of every Jewish individual in a way, was always there. And as David Ranan pointed out, it has always been very hard to have, almost impossible, to have in any way whatever that means, normal Jewish existence. You were always, a Jew in public, unless you didn't out yourself as Jewish, that made people feel uncomfortable. And I don't think it's just true for a certain generation. So my question is, in your view, how did that change? And what is new in what you describe over the last year? I'm aware that, of course, the function of the Antisemitismusbeauftragte is a new thing. But it seems to me, and I find it highly problematic. I mean, it's not just at every, there's not one federal level, on state level. I mean, by now, every university is supposed to have one, and every company has to have some, every larger company and every larger institution. I always joke there are more Antisemitismusbeauftragte soon than Jews in Germany. And what is their expertise? But in a way, I think what has changed is not so much the function of the Jews, but the circumstances of the times, and that has changed in the last, unfortunately, it's changed in the last few years. So my question is about seeing this in the broader perspective of post-war German Jewish history.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. It's wonderful. So the book has a chapter on philo-Semitism, and I published earlier a version of philo-Semitism in German media, and there I say that what changed in the past, let's say 20 years, so after the opening of the Holocaust Denkmal, the Holocaust Memorial, or the Memorial for the Murdered Jews of Europe, as its formal name, is that philo-Semitism functions as proof, or as proof of civilized Germany. So what I say is that philo-Semitism became a form of performance, of saying, well, this is kind of a proof that we're civilized and that we agree that this is what we do, and that developed since that performative element developed after, I think, unification in ways that exist in my work. And if we had more time, I would go into that, and will be developed in the book. So it's not only the showing Jews from the back or saying we love Jews because there was the Holocaust. This has been there for a long time, but actually the performative element, right? So I'm thinking, you know, with Goffman on doing gender actually later on, saying, well, how did I affirm my gender as a woman this morning? How did I affirm that I love Jews? I look at them and nothing happens to them. And that is something else. And it has to do with the changing of both the Jewish community or communities, right, and German society. And I think the larger element is that there are more Jews now that, and that's generational, that move away from the question of normalcy even, right? It's a plural democracy. It's a functioning plural democracy. I lived there for 10 years. It was good. Yeah, I experienced some very strange reactions to my Jewishness once it was revealed. And that was a form of existence that I didn't feel put me in danger, puts others, and I don't belittle this in any way. And so I think moving away from, let's say, what you know, Ms. Knoblauch and others that are pillars of Jewish community that say, well, there won't be normalcy again. What was the normal, right? The normal was to look at Jews in a certain way and then to look at them as not dead. I mean, first as dead, then as not dead. This is the work of Bodeman, and then later on through a kind of a theatrical exchange. And I think it's not that it's insincere, it's very sincere, it's a sincere performance. I wish, I mean, so there is a normative element. Here is the wish that more voices participate, and there are more voices now. More Jews can be visible and heard and produce work in art, in academia in Germany than before. But also that would inform the way we think about minorities in general in Germany, not Jews removed. And I think that would also help with anti-Semitism. So that's kind of the shortest answer I can give here, and I'm happy to continue this dialogue.
And Irit, do you want to say a quick word about
I mean, so the bundling together, that's a great point, Maor, Shani, thank you for raising it. So the devices, because the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has an element of saying that critique of Israel could be legitimate. Actually, in the former versions of it was better presented. And this is actually work that David Feldman and other colleagues did with what happened to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. So thinking about the critique of Israel policies as anti-Semitic in the version that is now implemented as the IHRA definition, which the experts follow, masks actual anti-Semitic convictions because it looks at, let's say, let's say the RIAS reports would say there was an attack of workers in a Gedenkstätte, in a memorial center, and they were made to feel like Jews. That's terrible. This is an attack on democracy. Right? It uses anti-Semitic convictions. So that's one form of bundling. And the other is that bundling often, or those anti-Semites, which are reprehensible, use reference to Israel or Germany's relationship with Israel, such as now, I think on the left, I'll give an example, statements like free Germany from Holocaust guilt, right? That again, this is to belittle the effect of Holocaust memory and education in Germany in order to critique Israel. So this bundling, we could understand it better and we could fight it better if there was less angst, there was less fear in talking about the fact that Israel launched a war. and is running a war, and not all its citizens want that, or want to protect or to support the government that is running this war. And some of them live in Germany, and all of the Jews, none of us is safer by bundling Israel and anti-Semitism now, wherever we live. So I think that was, again, kind of a historical intervention here in connecting to the conceptualization. Thank you.
Thank you, Irit. We are out of time. I'd like, before we close, I'd like just, and before I thank Irit and others, I'd just like to mention our next events. On the 30th of October, in the evening at 6:30, we have a public lecture by Professor Derek Penslar from Harvard on the 1948 Palestine War, from the local to the global. And on the 4th of November, we have another lunchtime seminar. That's a Monday, unusually for us, from Professor Susanna Heschel from Dartmouth College on anti-Semitism, sexuality, and sadism. But most important now, I'd like to thank Irit for a very thoughtful and equally challenging presentation, and for your reflective and also generous answers to the questions and to the discussion. I'd also like to thank everyone for coming along and giving up your lunchtime, and especially those who asked such interesting and penetrating questions and made comments. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you for everyone who came. I learned a lot from your questions and from the discussion, so thank you.